So this is inspector view. So for example, in the center head prefab, I actually have 4 different components: the transform, the mesh filter for the center head, the mesh renderer, the animator, the center head color spec. Okay, so sorry, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different components. Okay, so each component basically has a small pane related to it, and I can click on any of these to maximize it or to minimize it. So I can click on materials, it gets smaller and bigger. Minimize, minimize, minimize the component, maximize the component, maximize the component, maximize the component. Okay. Right at the top, you have a check next to the prefab. So this is a prefab center head. If I uncheck it, it will disappear from the scene. So now it's gone from the scene. I've unchecked it. I check it back again, it appears again. Okay. And the same thing applies for all the different components. So if I don't want this, I want to deactivate this component that is a constituent part of this prefab called center head. I can click on here, and then you will see it disappears. Now, the mesh renderer is a critical component of the center head prefab. So the moment I deactivate the mesh renderer, you see basically the center head disappears. So I can activate it back again if I want. The animator, I can deactivate it, activate it, and so on. So I can see all the different components. I can even remove components that I don't like, for example. And I can also add components. So adding components is pretty straightforward. I click on the add component button, and there are a whole bunch of components that I can add. Okay, so let's say I want to add physics, I can click on this, I see a whole bunch of things I can add. Or if I want rendering, these are a whole bunch of renderings I can add. If I want to add physics 2D, these are a whole bunch of physics 2Ds that I can add, and so on. Okay, so let's try and add a component to the cube. The cube is behind it. Let's look at a capsule. Okay, let's look at a capsule. Let's try and add a component to the capsule. I'm going to add a component to the capsule now, and the component is effects, a particle system. Okay, so now I've added something called particle system. It's like a special effect thing. You can see the component is here. The capsule is highlighted in the hierarchy view, and you can see that there's some preview of these special effects of this particle system. I can actually pause it, simulate it again, pause it, simulate it again, pause it, simulate again. So this particle system is now a component of the inspector game of is a part of the capsule game object, and I'm able to see it in the inspector view. And if I don't like it, I can remove. So I can just click remove component, and it disappears. So I can add components from here, or I can just click the component option at the main menu and click add. Okay, and then I'll be brought to this menu here. So pretty much 2 different ways of adding components. Okay. So now I'm going to add a rigid body to the sphere to show it's falling later on. Let's see where's the sphere now. Let me go to the sphere. Sphere is a bit out of view now. Let me move the yes, so that I can see the sphere. I'm going to move the present a bit out here. And now I'm going to move this sphere up a bit. And I'm going to actually add a rigid body to this sphere, so that later on you can be actually going to be able to see it falling. So I'm going to add a rigid body, physics, rigid body. So now the sphere, which is highlighted in the scene view, which is also highlighted in the hierarchy view, is in the inspector view, and I've included a rigid body component, and the use gravity field is checked. So later on, you're going to see that this sphere is going to start falling in the view of the main camera. Let me add another particle system as well to the cube to make it look a bit nicer. So let's add a effects particle system. So it's there. Okay, we stop the particle system now, so it's not so irritating. Okay, so that's the inspector view. Okay, now let's look at the scene view. So the scene view is basically this. You have already seen me interacting with the scene view to some extent. So the scene view is basically where you arrange various objects in front of the main camera. The main camera is this thing. And as I mentioned earlier, whatever is in the field of vision of the main camera will appear in the game view. Okay, so let's go back to the cylinder. Okay, so the scene view has several things that are in it. Let's discuss this briefly. Scene view, as I said, enables you to see your game visually as it is being built. Contains its controls, draw mode, render mode, scene lighting, audio mode, effects, gizmo selector, and scene gizmo. Okay, the scene gizmo is the most important one that allows you to actually view your scene in different types of modes. Let's go back to Unity. So this is the what we call the draw mode. The draw mode is how you're going to draw the various objects appearing in the scene. By default, it's textured. You can also choose wireframe. There are a variety of other options. You can see how they appear. Choose them. Textured wire, render paths. So let's fix that to textured. Then the next one is a render mode. The render mode is how the objects in the scene are drawn. By default, it's RGB. That means in color. You can also choose it in alpha if you want. Overdraw, mid maps. So let's fix it back to RGB. Then you have the 2D option. By default, Unity starts in 3D mode, but you may want to switch to 2D mode if you are designing a 2D game, for example. So if you click on that, your scene will basically map to a 2D orientation rather than a 3D orientation. You unclick on that, it goes back to here again. Then you have scene lighting, which is this button here. So this controls whether objects in the scene view will be lit by default ambient lighting or by lights that actually exist within the scene. Now you can actually create lights that go into the scene. You can see here you have directional light, point light, spotlight, area light. So I can create, for example, a directional light. Okay, and so if I create a directional light, this directional light is going to light up all the objects. Okay, so I can choose whether I want to have the lighting to come from a light object that I'm creating in the scene itself, or whether it's going to come from ambient lighting. Now, ambient lighting is a lighting that fills up the entire scene. So it's like as though there's this kind of big fluorescent lamp that's hanging at the roof of the scene and it's lighting up the entire scene, so there's light everywhere. Okay, if I click this one, the ambience lighting will turn off, and the only thing that's left is the directional light. So if I move the directional light somewhere else, then maybe it will not work anymore. So if I remove the directional light, delete, you see things have gone dark. Okay, if I click on the ambient lighting again, it goes dark. Unless I put in a directional light. Okay, then if I put in a directional light, the directional light will be able to give the light. Okay, so that means what I'm saying here with this button is, do I want the light to come from the ambient light or from lights within the system? See, if now currently the ambient lighting is turned off, so that means if there is no directional light, everything will go dark. Okay, as in this case. Whereas if I want the lighting to be throughout the entire scene, I just turn on the ambient lighting and lighting will be on throughout the entire scene. Okay, so that's scene lighting. Then audio mode, which is here, is to set whether an audio source in the scene view functions or not. The effects is to determine whether certain items, for example, like skybox, fox, flash, animated material, whether these items or these special effects appear in the scene view. Sometimes you may not want them to appear to make it easier for you to arrange the items, or you want to save on the rendering performance of your CPU card or whatever it is. So you may have certain reason why you don't want these effects to appear. So you can decide to check or uncheck the specific effects. Then you have the gizmos. Okay, this option tells you what kind of things will be displayed in the scene view. Okay, so for example here you can see there's actually a grid to give you an orientation of the landscape in the scene view. I can turn off the grid by unchecking this thing here, so the grid will automatically disappear. I can also click here to show the grid again if I want to. Okay, then there are a whole other bunch of built-in components that I can make it appear or disappear. So let's take a look, for example, at the capsule. Let's look at the capsule again. Where's the capsule? Okay, I'm going to just maybe drag the capsule up here a bit further in front so you can see. Now, if you look at this capsule, the capsule has a Capsule Collider. Okay, and the capsule collider is actually this green mesh that's around the capsule at the moment. And I can actually say that I don't want to see this green mesh, which is the capsule collider, and turn it off in the gizmos. So there is a capsule collider component here. Okay, let me just move this a bit to here so you can see it more clearly. Now, if I click down here and I say I click on the capsule collider, and you can see that the green mesh thing actually disappears. That's the capsule collider thing. It's disappeared now, and this has also been minimized. Okay, so the capsule collider is still there. It's just that it's not shown in the scene view. Okay, so I can control the kind of things I want to see. I click on it again, and you can see that the green mesh thing appears again. So I can decide what I want to see and what I don't want to see, depending on the object. So perhaps there's too much detail on the screen, so I might want to filter out things that I'm seeing. So by default, everything is checked, which means you should be able to see everything. Okay, that's the gizmo selector. And the last one is the scene gizmo. Now the scene gizmo is very important because the scene gizmo is the one that shows you which direction you're facing. Okay, so to understand this better, we're going to have to look at the concept of a coordinate system in the Unity. So currently we are working in a 3D space in Unity. By default, Unity opens up a project in 3D space. So 3D actually requires a special coordinate system, a 3D coordinate system. So let's take a look at this coordinate system. Okay, 3D space coordinate system. Okay, let's look at the scene view and the three-dimensional space coordinate system that's used in Unity. In three-dimensional space, you're going to need to have three axes, okay, the x-axis, the y-axis, and the z-axis to map out any point in three-dimensional space. So any given point in three-dimensional space will be a point consisting of three numbers, the x value, the y value, and the z value. So this is the x value here, this is the z value here, and this is the y value here. Okay. To make it easier, you can think of x as being right and left, y as being top and bottom. So positive on the positive y-axis is top, and then on the negative y-axis going down here is bottom. On the positive x-axis is right, on the negative x-axis is left, and then here z is, you can think of it as front and back. So z, positive z is front, negative z is back. Front, back, right, left, top, bottom. Okay. Corresponding to that, you have three possible planes that you can move an object on in Unity. So the XY plane, you can think of it as a flat sheet of paper which holds the X and Y axis. Similarly, the YZ plane, you can think of it as a flat sheet of paper that holds the YZ axis. And then the XZ plane is basically a flat sheet of paper that holds the XZ axis. Okay, so there are three possible planes that you can move an object on in 3D space. By default, in Unity, the y-axis is colored green, the z-axis is colored blue, and x-axis is colored red. So that's the color coding that's used in Unity. Okay, let's go back again to see how all this works out in Unity. So now, currently, you can think of it, I'm actually looking down along the z-axis, okay, and I'm looking down at the xy plane. Okay, y is, as we saw, top, bottom, and x is basically left, right. So right now, in the scene view, I, meaning I the viewer, am somehow looking, for example, through some kind of a camera, some kind of imaginary camera, at all these objects along the z-axis. Okay, so if I click here, for example, if I click on the Y, I'm going to actually start looking at this scene from the top. Okay, so you can see here now, I'm actually looking at this from the top. So if I'm looking from the top, I'm actually looking down on the Y-axis, and therefore, I will be looking down onto the ZX plane. Okay, if you can't figure this out, again, you have to try to visualize in your head how three-dimensional space works. But don't worry, if you just play around with this for a while, you should be able to get a hang of it. Okay, so now I'm actually looking down at the top. Okay, now if I click on the Z-axis, That means now I'm going to go back to either look at the front or the back, and I'll be looking down at the XY plane. So if I click here on the Z axis, I will now be looking at the XY plane and I'm looking down at the front. Okay. If I click on the arrow in the box in the middle, I will switch between two types of views, two types of 3D views. One is called the perspective view and the other is called the isometric view. Currently, I am in the perspective view. So if I click on this, then I go to the isometric view. This is the isometric view. And then if I click on this, I go back to the perspective view. So these are two possible views in Unity. Okay, this is done using the scene gizmo. Okay, so you can practice rotating around to get a feel of three-dimensional space. If I click here, I'm going to go right, back, left, front, right. So I'm actually, you can see I'm kind of rotating around the scene here. Okay, so this is going round. This is going round, I'm going round the scene counterclockwise. I can also go around the scene clockwise, for example, like this. I just click here. Then of course I can go up, top and bottom. So now I am looking right. I go to the top. Okay, then I come down again. Okay, then I can go to the bottom, and then I can come up again. Okay, so same thing as well. Just playing around with all of this, you can rotate the scene through many different views, many different angles. So you are viewing it from different perspectives. Okay, now let's talk about moving objects along different planes. Now let's look carefully here now. Let's take a look at this. Maybe this is okay. Let's take a look at this object here. Now this object here, which is the what's this? Which is the, what am I highlighting now? Cylinder? Is that cylinder? Yes, this is a cylinder. Okay. Now you see the cylinder. There are three things here that are colored, and these three things represent the three different planes that I was talking about earlier just now. Remember, there are three planes that you can move an object on. You can move an object on the XZ plane, or on the XY plane, or on the YZ plane. Okay. So depending on which plane you're moving the object on, you're going to see different results. So let's go back to Unity. So you see here, can you see there are three small plates? One is a blue plate, one is a red plate, and one is a green plate. So if I click on the blue plate, it means I'm going to move this object on the plane that consists of these two axes, which is the x-axis and the y-axis. So if I click on the blue, now currently I'm viewing the y-x plane. Okay, I'm looking from the front on the z-axis, looking down onto the y-x plane. So if I'm going to move this, I click on the blue plane, I will be able to move this cylinder, okay, left and right, and up and down. So left and right. See, I'm moving it left and right. And if you look down, at the game view, you can see that you can actually see the cylinder coming into view at certain points. Okay, depending on whether it's been obscured by the sphere and the other things or not. Okay, so see, I'm moving it either left and right or up and down. That's the XY plane. Okay, if I click on the right, on the red, if I click on the red, okay, if I click on the red rectangle, it means that I'm going to move. This cylinder, okay, on the plane that consists of the green arrow and the blue arrow, which is the YZ plane. So that means I am going to either, if I click on this red plane, I'm going to be either moving this cylinder up and down or front and back. Okay, so if I click here, see, now I'm moving up and down or front and back, front and back, front and back, up and down, front and back, front and back. Okay. And lastly, if I click on this green pane, it means I'm going to be moving this cylinder on the plane that consists of these two axes, which is the z-axis and the x-axis. So that's the zx plane. So that means I'm going to be either moving this cylinder left and right or front and back. So click here, left and right or front and back, front and back, left or right, left or right, left or right. Okay. So these are the 3 planes that I can move any game object in the scene. Okay, depending on which one one I'm clicking my mouse on before I start dragging the object. Okay, let's go back to the next thing, which is the game view. So the game view, basically the game view is where you can play the game inside the editor. It allows you to have a full simulation of the current scene. And you have 3 main buttons, the play, pause, and step buttons, which are used to control the game view. They control the transition within the 3 states of running, pause, and off. Okay? So when you play the game, you're actually going to see how the game looks like. Okay? So let's go back to the Unity. So when I click the play button, it enables me to play the current scene. So I'm going to see the scene in action through the lens of the main camera. So this is the game view. And all the controls, animations, sounds, and effects will be present and working. And the game will behave exactly like it would if it was running in a standalone player, such as my PC or another mobile device. So to stop the game from running, I will just click the play button again. So let's click play now. And you will see that the particle system is happening, and this thing just basically drops from view. And if I click the play button, it stops. Click play again, you see the sphere drops out from side because it has a rigid body component attached to it. And then if I click this, it again goes back to normal. Okay, so pressing the play button starts the current scene, and then pressing it again stops playing the current scene. Then you have the pause button. The pause button basically pauses the execution of the current running game view, and the game will maintain its state so that if you press the pause button again, it will continue exactly from the last point it was paused. Okay, and the step view is used when you are paused to advance the game 1 single frame at a time. So it's like slowly stepping through the game to see what happens. And this is helpful to allow you to debug issues that happen in the game. So let's see how this happens. So if I click play now, and I click pause. Okay, see now you pause, it stops, right? Okay, so you don't see the particle system continuing, the sphere is frozen. Now I'm going to click on the step button, 1 at a time, and you're going to look at the game view as I click on the step button. As I click on it, see the step, see it's happening, the particles are changing. So I'm clicking on the step button, click, 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 click. You can see it's dropping, the sphere is dropping. It's advancing 1 frame at a time, so you can see everything happening in slow motion. Okay, so this is useful for me to go through the scene to see what's actually happening, to make sure that I'm not missing anything out if I'm debugging a scene. You can think of this like stepping through, like in programming languages, you have an IDE which allows you to step through your code to see where you make errors. So here this is a similar equivalent. You're stepping through your scene as it's being played 1 frame at a time to see where errors might happen. Okay. Now the aspect basically is used when you want to design your game for a specific platform. You have to design your game so that it meets the aspect ratio of the target platform you're developing for. Normally when you're developing in a trial mode like here, you normally keep it in 3 aspect. The other modes you can go in at 5:4, 4:3, 3:2, 16:10. So these are common aspect ratios that are used in many different platforms like mobile phones, PCs, game consoles, and so on. So depending on what platform you're porting to, you will choose to develop in a specific aspect, but generally for most cases you just develop in 3 aspect. Okay. Then you have a maximize on play button. This allows the game to be blown up to full screen, so you can actually see everything happening more clearly rather than seeing in a constrained space in a game view. The game view will actually expand to fill most of the screen when you click on the play button. So if I click on maximize on play now, and let me just stop everything up. Okay, so now you can see if I turn this off and I turn it on again, basically now the game view occupies the entire screen, so you can see everything happening in a larger frame. Okay, and then the stats button can be used while you're running to give you an idea of the consumption of video memory and how your program is running, how efficient it is. This is practically useful if you are developing a very complex game for a platform and you're not sure whether the game can actually run well on that platform. Okay, so you can try this out if you click play here, and then you can click on stats. You can see the stats. So this is in real time. The main thread, okay, how much memory is being used, what is the render textures, and so on. So all these information statistics are useful for you if you are tweaking the performance and trying to optimize your game to run more efficiently. And the last one is gizmos. So this is similar to the gizmos option drop-down list that you had earlier. So just now I mentioned that the gizmos drop-down list for your scene basically is used to identify different things that you want to be able to see in the scene. So same thing here, you can, this is also going to identify different things that you want to be able to see in the game view. If you uncheck one of these boxes, then you cannot see them in the game view anymore. Okay. Okay, let's continue. Okay, the toolbar. Okay, the toolbar, in Unity, there are several main components of the toolbar: the transform tools, the transform gizmo toggles, the game view controls, layers drop-down, and the layout drop-down. Let's have a look at them in Unity. So here is your transform tools. These are going to be useful for you when you're navigating around in the Unity scene view. And so we will look at that later on when we see how we navigate around. This one, we'll ignore them for the time being. These buttons we already saw earlier. These are your game view controls. And then this one are layers. These layers is used to determine which object layers appear in the scene view. By default, everything appears in the scene view. And you may choose to want to have certain layers not appear, or you want to add in some extra layers, or you want to edit the layers and so on. So editing the layers will control how these objects actually appear in the scene view. So this is a bit more complex. We'll cover this later on. And then the layout, I think we saw in the earlier part of this lab session, you have many different possible layouts to lay out the different views, main views of the Unity interface. Okay, so that's it. Now let's look at the next important aspect here, which is navigating the Unity scene view. So to navigate the Unity scene view, we have the hand tool, which allows us to move around the scene view with a mouse. And already I've done this to some extent earlier. So let's see this in more detail. To move around, I click on the hand tool. Once I click on the hand tool, then if I drag the mouse on the scene view, I will actually drag the imaginary camera around the scene. Now, the first thing we need to clarify here is there are two types of cameras in Unity. One is the standard game object camera, which we saw just now as the main camera. So whatever is seen in the field of vision of the main camera will be what is seen in the game view. So when you start playing your game, you will actually see what is being seen through the lens of the main camera. And then there's also the imaginary camera, which is somehow representing the person who is looking into the scene view. Okay, remember these are two different things because the game object camera, the main camera, actually appears in the scene view. Whereas you can never see the imaginary camera. It is as though you, the human being, looking into the Unity GUI, your eyes are the imaginary camera. Okay, so the navigation tool, the hand tool, is actually used to move the imaginary camera. So let's see how this is done. Let's go back to Unity again. So first I have to click on the hand tool here. And if I click on the hand tool here, I will now be able to navigate the imaginary camera. So one way is to just drag it. So as you can see, I can drag it left, right, top, bottom. Okay, it's not that difficult. Okay, and then I can also alternate. If I hold on the alternate button, I'm actually going to rotate the camera. So you see it now turns in an eye, and I'm actually rotating the camera. I can rotate it left to right like this. I can rotate it top to bottom as well. I can rotate it around like this. Okay, hope you don't get too dizzy. So I can rotate it left, right. Oops, sorry. and rotate it left, right, and top, bottom. Okay. And of course, to zoom in and out, I scroll the my mouse wheel, scroll in and out, push up to scroll in and scroll up to zoom in and scroll down to zoom out. Okay, so zoom in and zoom out using the camera. Okay. Then the next one is let me turn off the stats here. The next one is the fly-through mode. The fly-through mode enables me to move through the scene using a first-person perspective. So it's as though I'm playing some kind of first-person shoot them up, as though I'm running through the scene itself. That's the whole idea of the fly-through mode. And it's activated by holding down the right mouse button. So when you hold down the right mouse button, you can either move the mouse to pivot the camera, or you press the WASD keys to move up and down. So move forward, left, back, and right. You press the QE keys to move up and down. And if you hold the shift keys while pressing the WASD or QE keys, you're actually going to be moving much faster. Okay, so let's give that a try. Okay, go back to Unity. Hold down the right mouse button now. You should see it now turns again to this. So now, if I move this around, you can see it's slightly different. The action is like as though I'm kind of looking around, like as though I'm standing around and I'm looking around the room, looking around the scene. Okay, that's how it feels like. Okay, then I can, if I want to move forward, it's W, move backward S, move left A, move right D, move up, move down is Q, move up is E. Okay, and I can go in very much faster if I want to. So hang on. So if I want to go in very much faster, I hold down. Wait. If I want to go in much faster, the effects are all. Oh, I could have gone to 2D. Sorry, accidentally went to 2D. Okay, so now if I want to go in much faster, hold down the mouse button, hold down the shift key as well, and then you see that I go in very fast and I go out very fast. So it's like a enhanced version of moving in, moving out, moving left, moving right. Okay, so that's how you would go about navigating in your Unity scene view. So to summarize, we have looked at creating a new project. We have looked at the main views in the Unity interface, which are project, hierarchy, inspector, scene, and game views, and the function of all these main views, and how we can navigate the Unity scene view. And that brings us to the end of the lab.